one day the person you become will get a chance to meet the person you could have became. Right. And what I take away from that is it's like, at some point I'm going to be on the last, stretch of my life, and I'm going to look back, and that's where regrets come from. And it's like the person I could have become, right, is going to meet the person who I am now. And am I going to be happy about that conversation, that interaction, or am I going to be disappointed?
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Oliver Wolf from the Wolf Syndicate Coaching, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Ultimate Closer Show, where I take awesome closers out of their productive days to invest their time into you. Now, together we'll talk about sales theories and philosophies, as well as actionable strategies, tips, and techniques to make sure that you're closing more deals. And so today on our show, we have another special guest. His name is Nick Hamm. And so Nick is the president of the Business Development Program. And at the BDP, Nick and his team help students achieve greater levels of personal and professional success by providing relevant work experience and transferable business skills. Now, on a more personal note, I've known Nick for maybe about 4 years now. And it's been quite the journey. During that time, I've really come to recognize him as a highly knowledgeable mentor. And so, in fact, I actually worked in the BDP myself. And during that time, he was always sort of, I guess, my coach or my mentor above, really there for me, teaching me, mentoring me, holding me accountable, leveling me up in every way that he can for a good 2-3 years. And so I can definitely condone a lot of where I am today to this man right here. And so I'm very excited to sort of dive into things with him now so that he can share only a bit of what I took away with all of you. And so Nick, obviously, welcome to the show.
Hi, Oliver. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I always like to start with just, first of all, where are you right now? Like what sort of, if you could sort of sum up where you are right now, like obviously, president of the BDP, but in your own words, like where do you see yourself right now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely on this entrepreneurial journey of life, which is really exciting. It's been 13 years now that I've been running this program. So it didn't initially start branded as the Business Development Program. We actually started as Scholars at Your Service, which is now one of the brands that operates under the Business Development Program. But really excited to keep working with youth and help them acquire all the transferable skills and gain relevant work experience to really try to set them out when they come out of university on a great path to accomplish a meaningful and successful career. So I really see life breaking down into kind of two different segments. You have like your first segment, which is kind of when you're from 0 to 17, you're really learning kind of how the world works. And a lot of decisions are very heavily influenced by your parents. And then the second half of your life, so age doesn't really matter here, but 23 plus, where you're building a career, you're building a family, and you're really determining what's the legacy you're going to leave on the world. And there's this transitionary period that coincides with when people typically go to university. And this is the group that we work with primarily. And the philosophy I try to take is if you can help people optimize this point of their life, if they can kind of get a head start on their career, acquire a lot of the skills that are necessary to succeed in life, you send them on an amazing trajectory coming out of school. So kind of, if you think of it as like projectile physics of like a small degree in elevation change at the point of launch can make a huge difference in the long term of where they end up. We're trying to optimize this phase of students' lives and set them on the best possible trajectory.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And that's super respectable, because I think it's a very challenging thing to do. I mean, obviously I was in it with you, but just to share with the audience, like it's super challenging. Like you're taking on that transition phase where a lot of people, they don't know really where they want to go. They have an idea, they have ambition, but they don't have like perfect direction and such. So it's very challenging to work with this kind of people. So it's respectable that not only are you doing that, but you've been doing it for like 13 years. And so I guess that's kind of like the opportunity to dive in is, okay, so here's where you are now. How did it come about? How did you get to this point where now you're able to lead these individuals and make that little trajectory that changes the rest of their life?
Yeah, I mean, and it's great to focus on kind of like the positives and the benefits that we do now. There was a huge amount of hard work, a huge amount of failure that kind of went into the journey to get to this point. So to start at the beginning, I think we'd have to really go back to kind of when I was studying at university. So I studied electrical engineering at the University of Ottawa. It would have been the early 2000s. And I guess to go a little bit further back, when I was considering what I wanted to do when I was going to school, I really had no idea. And so I remember sitting down having a discussion with my father, and my father was an aerospace engineer in the military. And so, through discussions with him, he's kind of like, you can be whatever you want in life as long as if it's some form of engineer. So,
very limited. That's we kind of teach that, right? It's like give the illusion of control, but not really.
Yeah, I don't think he was thinking of like tactics at that moment.
Definitely
not. And it's very important to understand that his intentions were very good, right? So he only wanted what he thought was best for me at that point. And he's like, look, you have strong math and science marks. You would be a great engineer. And of course, he has a passion there. So we had a lot of discussions about it. I applied to a bunch of schools for engineering. I got a full scholarship for Ottawa, so I ended up going to school in Ottawa. But about the second year into my studies, I really started kind of questioning, is this what I want to do with my life? And really at that point in your life, you have no idea what it is you want to do. I mean, we all think we know what we want to do when we're 17, 18 years old. The truth is you just haven't had enough experiences in your life to really know, what it is that you like and what it is that you don't like.
Yeah.
So really you should
beyond that too, it's also that up to that point, you've kind of had other people's perceptions and paradigms imposed onto you. So even what you think you may like or want to do, it's really just an accumulation of everyone else who's sort of shared their idea. For example, like your father, who had a bias towards the idea of engineering. So like that was an option, but other people who aren't around any engineers, they won't even think of it. So for sure, it's like you need to really start to experience your own self, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was saying before about the two phases of life. It's almost like when you get to university, that's when you really start thinking for yourself, making decisions, on your own. And so I think when you're choosing to go to school, it's still obviously very heavily influenced by the people that, are in our most inner circle. So I understand why it happened. That's what I chose. And so I started kind of, questioning whether that's what I wanted to do long-term with my life. I had an opportunity to set up and run a business when I was in school as well. So I ran my first business when I was in second year of school. It gave me some experience in entrepreneurship, what it was like to have a business. I learned all facets of business. So marketing, sales, holding myself accountable, time management, managing employees, conflict resolution. And so after my first year of doing that, I started to kind of feel that that's something I was passionate about. Like I got up every day, I worked my 60, 70 hour weeks, but like I loved every minute of it. And so I guess you could say I kind of got hooked at that point. And did my business again for a second summer after that. When I finished school, I ended up getting offered a job to work for a consulting company in Toronto. So I kind of packed up my car, didn't ship anything. It was literally just suitcase of clothes, drove off to Toronto.
And so, sorry, at this point, had you sort of decided that you were going to go down the entrepreneur route, or you were still not sure yet?
Well, actually, so at this point, the job I was offered was focused primarily on sales. And so one of the things I loved the most about my business was sales, right? So and more specifically, meeting clients, understanding clients' needs, and helping them kind of accomplish their goals, and at the same time accomplish my goals. And that's how I was able to create successful business relationships.
Cool. So there's two things right now that I'd love to dive into a little bit. So one was, again, you were going down that path of engineering. And I think this is important for some people that are maybe not in university, but just conflicted about decisions. So you sort of hit a fork in the road where you're like, of course, I can continue down university. I've got this scholarship. I can definitely succeed in being an engineer, which you completed your schooling, if I'm not mistaken, and could have pursued that. But then you decide to pursue this more entrepreneurial or sales route. How did you come to that decision? How did you sit with yourself and think like, again, my family's pushing me in this direction, but I know that I want to go this direction. How did you resolve that?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. You obviously know me decently well, so I'm definitely not the person that sits down and like contemplates and thinks things out and makes lists. I literally just kind of like go with my gut intention. And so when this opportunity presented, I got a call from someone I knew, and they're like, hey, we're looking for sales reps for this startup company in Toronto. Would you be interested in interviewing? I was like, yeah, you know what? And I just kind of, let it lead me to where it took me. And so I interviewed, got the job. It's like, you know what? I love doing sales. I would love to learn more. This is a great opportunity to kind of work with a small startup company. And so packed up and moved off to Toronto. So for me, it was less contemplation and more just action. And I think that that's something important because I think action brings clarity into knowing what it is you like to do. And I think someone can sit there at that precipice of uncertainty and just kind of, get into analysis paralysis where they just keep trying to figure out everything, but they're not moving. For me, it's like the way I created clarity is I took action, right? So it was just, hey, you know what? This is a great opportunity. Boom, let's jump on it. who knows, maybe 6 months I'd be packing the car up and driving back to Ottawa and focusing on something else. But at that point, I was like, you know what, let's just see where this takes me.
Love it. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, right? Because no matter what, like you can sit back and think all you want and all the potential possibilities, but until you really act, you have no idea what's actually going to happen. So you might as, it's kind of a little bit of a YOLO thing, but at the same time, like you're right, like that's how you'll find out. That's how you'll discover. Very cool. And then now the other thing you kind of alluded to, and I'm sure we'll probably come back to this later on as well, but you sort of pretty much gave your entire sales philosophy in a moment there. You said, so I really enjoyed getting to know clients, figuring out what their needs were and seeing how you can help them through your sales sort of thing. I'd love to sort of dig into that. So like if you could describe sales in like a phrase or two, what is sales?
So I don't like to call it selling.
Okay.
I like to call it helping people buy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that sales, the first step in selling is understanding who it is you're interacting with and what's important to them. Right. And there's sometimes when you go to like interviews and stuff like that, you'll get the, hey, so, can you sell me this pen?
Yeah.
And totally. Goes into this like they just vomit everything that they know about the benefits of this pen. And, oh, let me tell you about my pen. It's the very best pen. It can write upside down. It's water, blah, 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 blah. But really the question is, to the person that you're trying to sell it to is, how often do you use a pen in your everyday life? What do you use it for? What do you look for in a pen? Like, you need to understand your prospect's needs before you can create a solution that meets their needs and your needs. And so a lot of times when we think of sales, what first jumps to mind is that used car salesman. And really that's the most basic level of sales. That's really horrible sales in the grand scheme of things. So the first step in creating a meaningful transaction that brings value to both parties is understanding the other party involved in that transaction.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So then how, trying to bring it even more mechanical as possible. So again, I'm sitting with the client, right? Or the prospect, I should say. And I want to understand them. I really, really want to understand them, their needs and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like a lot of people, they don't know the methodical way of doing that. What would be your advice to someone like that? How do you sort of ask the right questions to get to know someone's needs?
Yeah, well, I think you just kind of touched on it. I think asking questions is really the path to this. So I think the most important thing is to ask open-ended questions, right? So you don't want to ask like yes, no questions, but you want to ask customers things that will get them speaking to give you as much information as possible. So I think that's one part, is asking good questions. And I think to become good at that, it's just about practice and repetition, right? So the way I became good at asking, or the way I became good at asking good questions is by asking a lot of bad questions and slowly seeing what the responses were. Did that give me the information that I was looking for? Did this person engage in conversation more? So it's just about repetition in gathering information. That's the first part. The second part, though, in gathering information is so frequently we're focused on the words that people are saying, but you can gather a lot of information by looking at, body language, tonality. When I, let's say, share the cost, and I always like to say cost, not price, because I feel price is negotiable and cost is like absolute. So if I share the cost of something with someone, my eyes are on them, right? I'm gauging their reaction. Did they kind of like subtly jerk back a little bit? Did they seem like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense? So all of these cues are helping to give you the information that are required to create a sale that meets and provides value to both parties. So really it's all about being attentive. It's like all of this information is there. You just have to open up your ears and kind of listen to it.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times, especially as salespeople, and it's funny, it's like, say you have a conference and you get a bunch of salespeople all together, and there's like 5 salespeople all huddled around having a conversation. All it is one person talking. They're loving that moment because they're getting the chance to talk. And the other 4 people are just, barely kind of staying involved in the conversation, waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah. So
everyone's just kind of sitting there in their own mind being like, okay, when do I get to say what I want to say? Mm-hmm. But really, what a good salesperson does is they're going to listen very attentively to all the information that's being presented to them. So instead of sitting there thinking, okay, here's my next line, or here's my next pitch, or here's my strategy I'm going to employ, be 100% present in that conversation. And it's going to provide you a lot of information that you would have normally missed that will be the key to closing that sale.
100%. Yeah. Big time. Very, very, very valuable and important tip to keep in mind in every conversation, not even just in sales, but really in life as well, right? Cool. So right now, in terms of your story, we're talking about how you've shipped yourself off to Toronto. You're taking a risk. You really have no idea if you're going to pack your bags and come right back. So what happens next?
So, I find a place to stay. So I stay with my aunt and uncle until I find like my own place, and go into the office. And I think there was either 3 or 4 other sales reps. It was very small. Like we were in a tiny kind of like back office. Yeah, real startup mode. And so the company I was working with had just landed a big contract with Home Depot in the States, and we were setting up their franchise and licensing program for their at-home service. So we were contacting. So the sales I was doing is we were prospecting and contacting local companies in the States, offering them an opportunity to license and partner up with Home Depot to be their at-home service provider for specific service types.
Interesting.
Okay, so we literally were just jumping on the phone and dialing for dollars. So I was like cold calling these companies and pitching them on the opportunity to partner with Home Depot. So when I first started, it was tough. It was really tough, man. I remember it's like getting in there and being in a room where other people are listening to yourself doing calls. And obviously, I've got a big ego. I want to be successful. A lot of things I've done up to this point, I've been a top performer. And, being vulnerable in front of these people and messing up calls in front of everyone else was really tough for me, because all of my experience up to this point was literally just, I was in my own environment. There wasn't a lot of people like watching what I was doing. But I mean, the only way to kind of succeed at that is you just got to throw yourself in, and that's how you're going to become good. And I remember I thought to myself after the first couple of weeks, I'm like, this is pretty tough. I started getting a little bit of traction, at least getting some people, not hanging up on me and listening to what I had to say. But I thought to myself, like, you know what, I'm going to apply myself and kind of go all in on this, and just do everything I can to play the volume game, like dial as many outbound calls as I possibly can in a given week. And that just made me get better faster. And within 3 months, I was, one of the top sales reps in the business.
So cool, man. That's awesome. First of all, congrats for that. What I'd love to dive into, there's 2 things there again. So one was you're saying like, again, you're used to sort of being on your own and not really having anybody observe you. And the flaw in that, of course, is when you're not observed, there's all kinds of feedback opportunities that you're missing out on. So then when you came into this environment where people were watching you, yeah, your ego gets flared, right? Like you get a little bit like self-conscious, all that kind of stuff. So what I'd love to sort of see what your thoughts are is how do you keep your ego in check such that you can open yourself up to feedback, right? So,
yeah, I think easier said than done.
And
I think this is something that, even to this day, I will still struggle with at certain times, because that ego, is that voice in your head. It can be challenging not to listen to at times. I think for me, it came down to, you always have to look at your options. And I try to have like an analytical mind in my decision making. So it's like, really, what is the decision I had in front of me? One, I could maintain my ego. I could, be viewed as someone who doesn't make mistakes, who's strong, and I could suck at sales and not make a lot of money. Or I could put my ego aside, be vulnerable, and put myself in that situation where people could look down upon me as having lower, skills, or not getting the proper type of results. But that's just a short-term pain, and this is going to be the path that I need to take to get to that high performance. So really it just comes to the question of, do I choose ego or do I choose my mission? And which one is more important to me? And for me, at that point, it's like I knew, and I know a lot more now than I did then, because I was still a fairly young guy, but I knew that it's like the mission was more important, and I would do whatever it took to get there.
Love it. Yeah, that's a really good point for sure. It's just basically what it is. It's like weighing the options. It's like, look, I could either give into this ego and like, protect myself and this illusion that I have about myself, or I can really, dive in and go all in and take any kind of feedback, whether it's painful in the moment or maybe even insulting really in the moment. But again, there's that truth, there's that lesson in there that can help you move forward and such. So very cool. Very cool. Okay. So now you're kicking ass, right? You're top of the leaderboard, all that kind of stuff. So what happens next? What's the next play now?
Well, I think so. Then we made a shift in our model where instead of doing everything by the phone, we broke the sales team down into certain people kind of like opening up clients, and then others, the more senior people would fly into the city and go and do like the meetings and then close and try to ink a deal. So I had an opportunity to shift into the outside team. What we did is our company, I don't know how many sales reps we were at this point, maybe like 8 or 10, maybe a few more. Like we were growing fairly rapidly. But we had like auditions. So everyone got a chance to go up and pitch in front of everyone else. And they were selecting, I think it was the top 3 people to go on the road. So I pitched. I was terrified of public speaking at this point. I have no idea how I got selected. I think it was more of, Nick, your pitch sucked, but it's like, we saw your work ethic and everything else that you've done. And once we get you out there, we know you're going to get better. So I somehow got one of those positions, then packed up and just did 2 cities a week. So just traveling I would just do one city for a couple days, do a whole bunch of meetings, give presentations, close, then move to the next city. And one of the things I would share, because at one point they redid our comp structure. So they changed how we were being compensated because there was a certain amount of sales that was happening on average. Like as a top performer, say the top performer was selling like, I think it would probably be about like 40K a month in contracts or something like that. So they wanted to incentivize us to be able to do more. So they put a really lucrative commission structure on the table where once we hit kind of like a minimum amount of sales, then we almost got, it's not a profit share, but like our percentage of the sale we were doing was going to come back to us in commission, and it would climb as we went up. So I remember when that happened, thinking to myself, being like, you know what, I can make some like serious money in doing this. I did the math and I was like, you know what, I think I could probably sell like 100K in a month, and I would be able to make, you know, $10,000 to $20,000 in commission. And so I did everything I possibly could do in pursuit of that. So I would go in early into the office. I would stay late. You know, people would be like, make a bunch of calls and then go to the bathroom. Me, I'm just hammering the phones, doing like, I think 250, 300 outbound calls per week, just like nonstop, doing everything I possibly could. And I remember that month, it was 2 things that I learned. One was when I really apply myself, the limit that I thought was capable of, I was able to surpass that. So my greatest month in sales was 40K. Up to that point, they changed the comp structure. And I think that month I did $120,000 in sales. And my commission check was in the 20s, which was like incredible for me at like a young age. And so that was so incredible just to see what I was capable of when I really applied myself. And it's so funny, the transition that happens, because, you know, at this point, you know, we had a good amount of sales rep in the office. I'm probably the youngest guy, or fairly close to the youngest guy, the least amount of sales experience. And at first, you know, a lot of the older guys, they kind of look down at me of like, okay, this guy's young, he doesn't know what he was doing, blah, blah, blah. Then you put up some numbers like that, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, Nick, like, what's the secret sauce? Like, how are you able to do that? You know, that level of sales. And really, there was no secret sauce. It was just the level of commitment that I had to pursuing that and making that money. So that was a turning point for me.
Yeah, so there's an interesting there as well, for sure, is like, again, like on the mechanical level, what you did is, you just pounded the phone over and over and over and over and over again, and you know, made the sales appointments and so on and so forth. But really the underlying factor is like, it was that commitment. And so I guess maybe what I'd love to derive out of this is like, maybe you can bring it to a broader or a higher level, is how does someone get that committed to a goal? Because again, just to continue, especially because we'll be posting this, probably in January, right? Everyone's sort of in this state of like resolutions, goals, all that kind of stuff, right? Everyone's like, yeah, we're going to go big this year. And then of course, as we know, 1 or 2 months later, everything sort of drops off. So how were you able to sort of get yourself committed to really put in the hours every single day?
Yeah, I think it's, to comment on the New Year's resolution kind of trend that happens, I think that it's like, to have a commitment to something that's going to drive you to have continuous action and to deal with pain on a day-to-day basis, that commitment has to be extremely strong, right? And so that commitment is not okay, it's, you know, New Year's now, I should probably make some resolutions, you know what, I should probably go to the gym. That's a loose commitment. That's not something that someone's really committed to. And so when I saw the opportunity, I sat down and I was like, man, I can make like 20K in a month. Like, I used to make 20K in running my business almost for like a whole summer. Like, I can make that in 1 month plus my base. That's crazy. What would I do with that money? What would that money mean to me? How is this going to accelerate me in my life? How can I get into real estate? Like, I mapped out not what's going to happen when the money hits my bank account, but what's going to happen for everything moving forward, from what I do with that money. Now that if I'm able to earn that much right now, that substantially increases my value of what I should be able to command on the marketplace. Like, what does that mean for my long-term success? So I started playing all these things out in my head. And then it just became like, it's the same thing. Like, do I want to just go in and work 9 to 5 and do the average, make an okay living? Or do I want to go all in and start to live a life of something extraordinary? And when you kind of have clarity in what is that decision I'm making, is it left or is it right? It's a no-brainer which direction I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Cool.
So, and I'll come back, maybe we can touch on that because a little bit later, because I ended up becoming a corporate trainer where my job was just to work with sales reps. So I learned a lot more about having what I call an emotional anchor and sparking interest in things and how to create that motivation. At this time, I was just learning this all through doing. So it's like, I had no idea what it is, what it was.
You know, the actual strategy, you were just like trying things and they worked and you're like, cool.
I'm like, do I want, and cause you got to think of it too. It's like, I just moved to Toronto. I have no friends really in Toronto. I was staying with my aunt and uncle. I think by this time I got my own like basement apartment. It's like, it was a place to sleep. I was not proud of it. I did not bring people over there. It was literally just like a place to sleep. So I'm like, what else am I going to do? So do I want to just chill at home and play video games and have an average life? Or do I want to go all in on this and like make some serious money? It was really simple for me at that point. I had very little distractions.
Yeah, no, that's super important for sure. Yeah, I really like, and then even again, it's like bringing that to a more higher level, relatable level. It's like really what you did is you got a lot of clarity on exactly what desire you wanted, both short, medium, and long term. So you combine that short term result, potential result, to how it's going to have an effect over like the spectrum of your life. Whereas a lot of people, they'll just think in terms of that result, right? Like the gym thing, like you said earlier, like they just think like, oh, I want to lose a few pounds. And they don't think like, well, what does that actually mean to me if I lose those few pounds? Like I'll walk with more confidence. I'll be able to start, like, there's just so many other things that are consequential to that result that people just don't think about. They just go just for that one result. And again, that's not what's going to get you up at 5, 6 in the morning to hit the gym, or, 7, 8 o'clock, like 2 hours before everyone else to make those calls and so on. So very cool. I like that you were able to figure that out sort of intuitively.
Yeah, I think and it becomes more clear as I get older. Like this was, we're talking like close to 15 years ago at this point,
yeah.
Right? Or like probably about 13 years ago, 12,
sure.
Yeah, about 13 years ago, 14 years ago. But I think it becomes more clear as you get older, but really
so
it's like
accelerate the timeline if you want, for sure.
Well, it's like we have a finite amount of days, right? So it's like, we were born, we're going to die. That's how this works. You can't fight nature. And so the question becomes, what are you going to do with each of these days is an opportunity, right? Like I'm so grateful to have each day and all the opportunities that it brings. The question is, what am I going to do with it? And I think something that, and I'll relate this back to my father and having an engineering mind. My whole life growing up, it's like my father being an engineer. I've really been trained to kind of think like an engineer. So it's like everything was, how does this work, Dad? And how does that work? And my dad just seems to know everything about all this kind of stuff. So he would teach me all these different types of things. But every time I would do something, I'd always be thinking like, well, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? How does this fit into the bigger picture? And it's like, one of my superpowers, I guess, is like I can take these situations, I can just zoom out, 1,000 meters and look at it from above and see what are the consequences of my actions today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, or to the best of my ability of kind of like assuming what they would be. And then I try to make my decisions based on that. So it's like my decision's not like, do I feel like going to the gym this morning? It's, do I want to have, the health? Do I want to, be here on this planet for as long as possible for my wife and for my kids? Exactly. If I want to build a legacy, I need as much time to build that legacy as possible. If I want to have energy to attack all of my stuff every single day, that comes from, taking care of myself from a health standpoint. So it's not the, can I have 6-pack abs I can post on Instagram 2 months from? That's not the goal. The goal is like a much bigger, higher level perspective.
100%. Yeah. Yep. Cool. So again, so kicking butt, top sales, all that kind of stuff. What's next in the Nick Hamm story?
Yeah. So I think it was maybe about a year of traveling. I started getting sick of traveling. So it's amazing when you're young at first, rental cars, hotels, cities. But then after a while, you're just like, you know what? I want to be home on the weekend. I want to, see my friends, see my family, stuff like that. So I remember coming back from a trip, walking into the president's office and basically pitching a promotion for myself. So I'd done all the math and I was like, look, I'm top sales rep at this point. I need to go in there and justify why I should no longer be selling. But if they're going to lose my sales, they need to get a boost from my actions somewhere else. So I was like, look, I think we had about 30 sales reps at this point. I'm like, if I work with all the sales reps and teach them all the things that I know, if I can improve their results, I think it was like 5 or 8% or something like that, that would offset my sales. And anything I can do in addition to that is going to be actually better for the company. So pitched it. We, discussed it a bit. Basically, the president of the company is like, you know what? I agree with you. Let's do it. We figured out comp, base, all that kind of stuff. And then my new job at that point was just to work with all the sales reps and try to improve their sales overall. So coming back, and I'd identified, same thing, not by study or research, just from my own experience, that having a strong why was the biggest motivator and driver for high performance in the sales room. So what I would do is I would go around to the cubicles, I'd sit down with each of them, and I would talk to them, what would you like to do this month? Right? What's the biggest month you've had before? What's the commission check going to be if you're able to hit this level of sales? And we would start having discussion. So not me telling them what I want their sales to be, not them telling me, but a conversation around, what they're capable of doing or what it would be like if they were to hit this. And so a lot of times people, they want to get commission checks, or a certain level of sales, but they fall through on the execution. So we'd have a discussion around that. And I'll give you an example. It's like I talked with one of the guys, be like, what would you do if you made an extra 5K this month? Right? Where would this money go? He's like, well, you know what? I've always wanted to take my family to Disney World. Like, okay, well, how much would that cost? He's like, I'm not sure. I'm like, all right, let's look it up. So jump on Google. We start looking it up. How much would it cost? Where would you stay? What are the different packages you would do? Talk to your kids about this. Get their support. And let's put this on the table. So literally, when you're sitting at your phone, you have a choice of, do I want to go to Disney World, pick up the phone, do this? Do I want to just get my base this month or a low check, keep doing what you're doing? And we would post pictures all throughout their cubicle of the rooms they would stay, the flights that they were going to book, like everything. And so it would be different for all different people, but we'd put all these reminders and cues. And then it's like, if I saw them not being on the phone and stuff, I'd be like, are you going to Disney World this month? Jim or whoever the person's name is. And I would push them on that. And it would always come back to, you're doing this for yourself to get X or to get Y or to set a record. It doesn't have to be always materialistic. I'm using that as an example.
Yeah, but the point is you're keeping them accountable to something more than just the numbers. It's really a true desire that they have beyond the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And so that discussion is a sale in and of itself, right? Because what I'm doing is I'm understanding their needs, right? And I'm figuring out what it is they would like to do, what they would do if they had extra money, all these types of things. And then I'm taking their perspective in line with the company's perspective. Obviously, they can't just sit there and sell nothing because they're going to get fired. We would never have conversations about negative stuff. I feel that's not the right way to motivate people. If you want to motivate someone to keep their job by threatening to fire them, that'll work for 3 months. And then they're just going to be like, you know what?
But they're just in fear the whole time.
Or this is, I shouldn't say retarded. That's the wrong word. This is stupid or whatever the case. So then it's like, it means nothing to them. So it's all about the inspiration to acquire more, not to just keep it the status quo.
Less. Yeah, exactly.
And so then I would do that with them, and it worked well. Not everyone would hit it all the time, but it's like we saw a lift in sales, and the lift in sales that was created from the coaching was more than what I was selling myself on a monthly basis. So it won for the company, and then the real exciting part for me was that the company started paying me to go to different like sales conferences and go to all these different workshops and training environments for me to become stronger myself, so I could bring back to the team, which was a huge value add for myself as well.
For sure. That's super fun. Yeah. I actually wanted to even relate that to my own story a little bit. When you're talking about like having that inspiration and such, I kind of took it a step further in that in November, it was like around when I was really starting to get serious about my sales coaching, and I had committed to a trip to go to Costa Rica, which is actually going to be 10 days from now that I'm leaving to Costa Rica. But when I made that commitment, it was a $6,000 investment, because it's like a full-on entrepreneur mastermind retreat, like a whole nine, everything included, so on and so forth. And I did not have that money. I definitely did not have it at all. But making that commitment and even like putting the flight on my credit card, like I was like, I have to do this. Like I don't have a choice. Like this has to happen or I'm screwed. Now I'm not saying to necessarily get people to go to that point of screwing themselves, but it's like, again, having that like desire that you have decided that you're going to achieve. It pushes you beyond what you can imagine or even think that you can do. And so I find that it's awesome that that's what you experience. And then I had that, I've had that throughout my life, but like, this was like a very recent one that was pretty scary because I did not have that $6,000.
It's the burn the boats mentality,
100%.
And I really believe in that. And you have to be careful, right? I'm definitely not saying that everyone should go out there and max out their credit card for what they want and then just like it'll work itself out.
Yeah, no.
But it's like when you fully commit to something and in your mind there's no other option except for victory, that's when you always succeed. Like I look back on my life of having those months where it's just like, oh, like a long time ago being like, I have no idea how I'm gonna make rent this month or whatever the case. And then all of a sudden something comes in place and it works. And it's like it's always just putting yourself in the situation where you're really committed towards something and things always tend to work their way out. So like it always gets done within the time frame that you give yourself.
Yes. Awesome. So continuing with the story, where are we now? So you've been a sales manager, You've lifted results.
Yeah. And then it's like, I got to a point where I was missing that entrepreneurial piece of running my own business. So I kind of started looking at, well, what should be the next business I should do? I saw the financial crisis in like 2007 kind of like setting in, figured that a great business to be in would be consumer proposals, debt consolidations, bankruptcies, started a business in the financial. So found someone who had experience in that aspect, started a business with them, did it for about a year. It's like we had okay success, pretty decent success, but I wasn't really, like, I didn't care for the service we were providing. I started that business because I thought it was a great business that could make a lot of money in a recessive economy. I didn't start that business because I actually cared about the service that we were providing. And so I'd be meeting with all of these clients all the time that are in really difficult positions in their life, and they're obviously looking to fix that and solve their financial issues. But it's hard to not let that affect you all the time. Like, it just kind of kept bringing me down. I felt like I wasn't working in and with people of like positivity and like, let's change the world. It was more of like desperation. And so decided that it's like, you know what, this isn't really the right long-term business for me. And that's when kind of got back to like, what is it that I want to do? And I look back at my experience of like being in that like uncertain place in the transition through university and running a business and getting experience. I'm like, you know what, I want to provide this service to others. I want to be able to go back and help people figure out what it is they want to do and provide them with the work experience and develop the necessary skills, knowing that that won't be an end destination for them forever, but being like a turning point where one day, like the thing I'm addicted to that I chase, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it's maybe like 2 to 3 times a year. Someone goes out of their way that did our program like 4, 5, 6 years ago, and they contact me like, Nick, you know, all the things that you taught me about, or not necessarily me, but our program taught about sales, about entrepreneurship, about believing in yourself, following your passion, working hard. It's like, that has brought me to where I am in my career now. And if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be where I am. And thank you so much for that. Like, I will never forget this experience that you provided. And being that teacher that had that impact at some point, like, this is how I will change the world. And that's the feeling that I'm addicted to, that I chase. And obviously more frequently people tell you when you don't do a good job than when you do a good job. But when you do a great job and someone really goes out of the way to recognize you for that, it's the best feeling in the world.
For sure. Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that, as I've of course been a coach and I've gotten those kinds of things. And it's super inspiring to be in that leadership position, to be a guide to someone, for them to find their, you know, higher self, truest self, next level self, so on and so forth. So once again, very respectable and admirable that that's what it is. And what's also interesting too, that I want to touch on, because I feel like a lot of people might be in this position too, where, you know, again, you were doing something that was bringing in money, it was generally successful. And the fact is, if you kept it going, I'm sure it would have been even more successful. However, it didn't align with like your purpose or your desire. And there's a lot of conflict in the world about like, should we be purpose driven, or should we be money driven, or safety driven, or like, you know, how should we be driven? And I'm wondering, like, could you speak to that? Like, how did you go from knowing that this would make you some money, but deciding your purpose that you have no idea if it would make you money?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question that I'm still trying to figure out. But here's where I'm at. Okay. So when I was younger, I thought it was all about money, right? I'm just like, I want to make a lot of money. Money buys happiness. It gives, I didn't think of it like that. I thought of it as, you know what, money buys you time. So it's like, if I don't want to clean my house, I'll just hire a housekeeper. And if I have money, I can do that. Or, you know, if I want to go travel to Greece, I can do that if I have money. So I figured money is like the main pursuit, right? Then it's like, as you start making money and you realize that there's more to life than that. Like, it's not completely fulfilling. Then I thought it was about setting big goals and accomplishing big goals. And then you work really hard and you accomplish a big goal and you feel like something's still missing. So this is where I'm at now. I would say that happiness, I measure my happiness based on the application of my efforts. So I feel the most happy when I do something 110%. Like, I put all of my effort, all of my focus. And this could be something as playing blocks with my son, right? Zero distractions. I'm 100% present at that moment. We're bonding, we're connecting. It's like, it could be that. It could be having a conversation with someone like yourself, just being 100% present. It could be doing all the things I need to know or I need to get done within my business. It's the full application of myself. It's not the outcome. That's where I find my happiness comes from. So if my happiness comes from applying myself, I need to apply myself to something that, like, I might as well apply myself to something that I enjoy doing or that is going to make a bigger difference in the world, not just like apply myself to, like, let's say, you know, pouring coffees, or like, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But it's like, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it to something that can have a bigger impact outside of myself. But what gives me happiness is knowing that I've 100% applied myself to that task.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that relates definitely to sort of just the idea of like regret. Cause I feel like if someone does something not entirely, whether or not it succeeds, there's going to be that sense of regret. But if you did do it to the max of what you feel you could have, whether or not you fail, you can still feel sort of satisfied and fulfilled with the fact that, again, I did all that I could, and now I'm going to move forward from there. And of course, just the other thing you said about being fully present, or what I heard recently at an event that I spoke at, one of the speakers said, own your now. And I really like that. That's kind of what you're saying is like, you got to really own your now, like be in the now and own it and be the best that you can in that now. So cool. I really like that. And so now I guess we're kind of transitioning into where you are now a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I would just make a comment. So I'm a part of a mastermind group with a bunch of different like CEOs across the world, I guess, mostly North America based. And someone shared a quote with me a couple of weeks ago, and it really stuck in my mind. I'm actually getting it like turned into a piece of artwork, and it's going to go up on my wall at home. It's just like a constant everyday reminder. And that is that one day, well, I think the quote starts with the definition of hell is, but I'm dropping that part. I'm just going.
Yeah. Start a little more positive.
Yeah. One day, the person you become will get a chance to meet the person you could have became. Right. And what I take away from that is it's like, at some point I'm going to be on the last, stretch of my life, and I'm going to look back, and that's where regrets come from. And it's like the person I could have become, right, is going to meet the person who I am now. And am I going to be happy about that conversation, that interaction, or am I going to be disappointed? And so thinking of that every single day, it's like, am I living it to the max? Am I doing everything I possibly can? That's what gives me happiness. And I think when I look back on my life, when I'm like 70, 80, hopefully 90, let's say, and I'm at the last stretch, that's how I'm going to measure my success. And I'll be like, you know what? Like I did everything that I could have done, or I lived my life to the max, and I have no regrets.
Totally. Cool. Now, I know that we were supposed to cut things off here, but are you open to continue a little bit, or did you want to finish it off here?
Do like maybe like another 5?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Because now we're actually where you are now. So I'd love to sort of like, okay, Nick Hamm of the present day. Let's see if we could sort of drive some value in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah. So it's a couple of years ago, I realized one of the flaws in our business model is that, we're only a stepping stone for students. So we're not like an end career. So I created an incubator program, which is more of like a final destination for people. So kind of like a Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, but the only way you can pitch your idea is if we work with you for at least 2 years and we know that you're someone that's brought results and has a good history of work ethic, integrity, all of the different values that we embody within our organization. So right now, we're actually making a shift where I want to try to help as many students as possible. So it's all about having the biggest impact that we possibly can. And so this used to only be, we would work with students who are part of our franchise program where we help them set up and run their own small service-based business. We offer coaching, support, guidance, mentorship, stuff like that. But we've also now added a couple different wings of our organization. So we have paid internships and we have corporate employee positions as well. So instead of just working with entrepreneurs, we're now working with students in any capacity possible. The way that we do it actually is it's all about values-based hiring. So we're looking for people who have the same values as us. So I spent a lot of time defining what those values are and what our purpose is. And if they have similar values, then we put them through a set of placement calls and application process where we try to understand, what it is they're looking to gain, where do they see themselves in the future, almost like you're here, where is that destination? And a lot of people don't know what it is. So we try to help have that conversation to figure it out. And then we look at, okay, is there a good path for you to go a certain way, a certain portion of the way there within our organization, maybe as an employee or as an intern or as an entrepreneur. And we use personality assessment. So right now, that's kind of what we're focusing on doing is working with as many students as possible, understanding where they want to go and how they're going to get there, and then laying out a plan that, if possible with us, they can work with us to gain those things, or if it's just laying it out for them to go on their own, I have no problem sharing that with people as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So I mean, we're pretty much at the end here. So Nick, if someone wants to find out about you or the BDP or specifically what you're just talking about now, right? Like I'm sure there's going to be some students watching and they might be very curious about, hey, like, first of all, what's my path? And second of all, can I take that path with you? Where can they go to find you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of either you or the BDP?
Yeah. So I would say our website's a good starting place. So it's the BDP, so business development program.ca. Maybe you can share the link in the description or something like that.
Yep.
Also, if you feel free to add me on LinkedIn. So it's Nick Hamm, Hamm, or on Facebook. Really, I'm a strong advocate of entrepreneurship in any way possible. So if someone's just looking for some advice on sales, entrepreneurship, even if it's not about working with us, just for their own business, more than happy to schedule a quick call and just try to provide some value.
Awesome. And obviously Nick will be tagged in the video for on Facebook at this point. You guys can message him in the comments. Otherwise, there's YouTube as well. You can message in the comments and I'll relay the notes over to him. So to recap the episode, on this episode of the Ultimate Closer Show, we had the privilege to dig into some sales theories, philosophies, as well as actual strategies, tips and techniques, stories, and all kinds of other ideas to help you close more deals here with Nick Hamm. And so a little bit more specifically, what we talked about is things like, taking action to get clarity. So not just like falling into that paralysis of analysis and just go out and take action, helping people to buy, right? Not selling people, but helping them to buy by understanding their needs and connecting your product or service to those needs. We talked about work ethic and how that's just a principle you need to have to really succeed in life. Talked about creating commitment by relating the result of what will happen on a larger scale. So both like when you're committing to your goals for 2019 and such, don't think of it just in terms of 2019 or next week or that 6-pack abs. Really try to connect it to the macro scale of the year from now, 3 years, 5 years, and beyond. And so we got a lot of value out of today. So I really do appreciate you being here. And so, everyone, as you know, sales is an epic journey, and it's infinitely more difficult without a guide to show you the traps to avoid and the path to excellence. So if you're on your sales journey and realize that you do not want to do it alone anymore, then let me be your guide. You know where to find me. And so once again, Nick, thank you so much for being on the show. I wish everybody an ultimate closer day.
Thanks for having me, Oliver.